On October 26, 1960, the legislature sits for the last time, is in progress. The council is saying farewell to a place in which it has sat since 1872. The leader of government business, the Honorable Douglas Fletcher, makes one of the parting speeches.
The important lesson to us as a nation is that the traditions and good parliamentary customs established in this building should never change wherever our legislature may be housed. It is proper and symbolic that this physical change should come so soon after, and perhaps along with our political changes. And I feel that our entire nation, sir, judiciary, parliamentary, administrative, and citizenry, should regard this change as emphasizing the challenge to us all, and look forward to the future with confidence and determination, prepared to tackle the problems which may and will arise with zeal and enthusiasm, tempered with the caution of experience and tradition.
He is followed by the Honorable Rudolf Burke, Minister without portfolio. And the Honorable Brian Nation, the longest sitting member.
We may give rein to imagination, and we may indulge in the fantasy that as we go hence from this historic chamber, it wishes us Godspeed, while we in turn carry its memories and proudly bear its traditions with us to another place.
We shall miss the close proximity in which we have given battle to each other, government and opposition alike, in this chamber. We shall miss the old atmosphere that this old-fashioned chamber seemed to preserve. And so, as we say goodbye to take up residence in a new building that will be grand in comparison to this, let us continue to draw inspiration from the lives of our forefathers, and so conduct ourselves that future generations will call us blessed.
The closing speech is made by the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Donald Sangster. And the Speaker, the Honorable Burnett Coke, closes the session. The leave-taking ceremony ended, the procession to the new house begins. So the government has left Headquarters House for good. Let us have a look at some of the features of this grand old mansion of Georgian design. The impressive wrought iron gates and main entrance retain their original pattern. Unaltered, too, is the picturesque interlocking staircase of 25 steps. Each step is uniquely anchored in the inner wall, and the entire structure fans out like the turning pages of a book. The wide arching doorways of the spacious rooms are adorned with carvings of extreme artistry, a testimony to the excellence of 18th century craftsmanship. Its stately main hall was converted into the historic council chamber, which has been altered from time to time as a result of the increase in the membership of the legislature over the years. The Jamaica coat of arms on the paneled mahogany arch above the speaker's chair is a recent adornment by one of the island's leading sculptors. Before the clerk's table is the double rack for the two silver gilt maces dating from the 18th century. At the southern end of the chamber is an old grandfather clock, a gift from the late Philip Stern, a former clerk of the house. These, then, are some of the outstanding features of Headquarters House today. But what of the past? What grand events have colored its history? To seek an answer, let us go back to the very beginning of British government in Jamaica. Somewhere in the locality of Fort Charles at Port Royal, the first legislative body of Jamaica under English rule was summoned by Edward Doyley in 1661. Doyley wielded the full power of the Crown as president of a council of purely nominated members. The seat of government was shifted from Port Royal to Spanish Town a few years later. Here, Sir Charles Littleton, Deputy Governor of the island, convened the first House of elected members in 1664. The foundations of representative government were laid, and a limited number of citizens were given the right to vote. Samuel Long, a representative from Port Royal, emerged as an outstanding champion of parliamentary freedom and civil liberty. Sir Charles Knowles, who became governor in 1752, caused the fiercest political dispute since the days of Long, when he supported the petition of the merchants against the planters to move the island's capital from Spanish Town to Kingston. The merchants almost had their way when the House of Assembly sat at Kingston in 1754. For a few days in 1755, the Assembly actually met in Hibbert House. The planters were boycotting sittings of the Assembly, and to obtain a quorum, it was necessary to meet at Hibbert House, where two members, Colonel Lawrence and Thomas Hibbert, were lying ill. In 1872, 117 years later, this mansion became the seat of the island's legislature and remained so for 88 years. It was built by Thomas Hibbert, a wealthy merchant who was later elected Speaker of the Assembly. A memorial to Thomas Hibbert now stands at Agualta Vale in St. Mary. The continued protests of the planters caused the British government to authorize Lieutenant Governor Henry Moore a prominent planter, to move the capital back to Spanish Town in 1758. To keep the seat of government at Spanish Town and undermine Kingston's growing importance, More started the erection of a new King's House, which on completion was considered the most impressive of its kind throughout the British American colonies. A new House of Assembly building was also erected and completed 1762. This building now houses the offices of the St. Catherine Parish Council. With the magnificence of these new buildings, appropriate ceremonial was introduced at meetings of the legislature. Among other things, 2 silver gilt maces were obtained, one for the council and the other for the assembly. Constitutional government was gradually taking form, but many more far-reaching events were to influence its development. Slavery was abolished in 1838, but the vast majority of the people were yet to gain political freedom. Their demand for civil liberties grew louder and louder. On the 11th October 1865, a bloody rebellion occurred at Morant Bay. The courthouse was burnt, leaving intact only the lower floor upon which the present superstructure was erected. George William Gordon, member of the Assembly and champion of the peasants, was charged with inciting the rebellion. Gordon left his sickbed and went to Headquarters House, where he was arrested by Governor John Eyre. He was hurried off to Morant Bay and illegally hanged before the courthouse on the 23rd of October, 1865. As a result of the Morant Bay Rebellion, Jamaica's 200-year-old representative government was surrendered by a majority of the Assembly against the strong protests of a handful of its members. John Eyre, who had intimidated the House into adopting this course, was subsequently recalled to England and replaced by Sir John Peter Grant. In 1872, Grant shifted the capital from Spanish Town to Kingston. Headquarters House was purchased from the War Office and finally became the seat of the legislature. The great hall of the House became the council chamber. Partial representative government was restored in 1884, when the governor, Sir Henry Norman, presided over a council of nominated and elected members. Demands for fuller representation and responsible government were again raised in the early years of this century. Then came the disturbances of 1938, and there emerged Norman Washington Manley and William Alexander Bustamante. And a new Jamaica was born. In 1944, the island obtained a new constitution with universal suffrage. A 2-chamber legislature consisting of the Legislative Council and the House of Representatives was established. The 2-party system came into being. The seed of responsible government was sown when 5 elected ministers with limited responsibility were appointed. And in 1953, Sir Alexander Bustamante became the first chief minister when ministerial government was introduced. 1957 marked a substantial step towards self-government. and it was greeted with jubilation at a ceremony at South Parade. Sir Hugh Foote read a proclamation formally granting a new constitution to the island.
Now, therefore, I, Hugh Mackintosh Foote, Knight Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Captain General and Governor-in-Chief in and over the island of Jamaica and its dependencies, do hereby fix and appoint the 11th day of November 1957 as the day upon which the provisions of the said Jamaica Constitution Order in Council 1957 shall come into operation. And I further direct that this proclamation be read and proclaimed in places specified by notice in the Jamaica Gazette.
In 1959, Sir Kenneth Blackburn read yet another proclamation granting full internal self-government.
Appointed ministers by His Excellency the Governor on my recommendation. The Honorable B.L. Arnott to be Minister of Finance. The Honorable A.G.S. Coombs to be Minister of Communications and Works. The Honorable F.A. Glasspool to be Minister of Education.
We have come a long way from the rule by the few for the few in 1865 to Crown Colony government in 1866 to the first steps on the road to responsible government in 1944 to full internal self-government in 1959. And we honor not only those leaders who are happily still with us, but some of the stalwarts of the past who contributed to the fulfillment of a people's dreams. Robert Love, J.A.G. Smith, N.N. Neversole, members of the Legislature, which sat at Headquarters House, the scene of all our recent constitutional triumphs. The Legislature enters its new abode, the George William Gordon House, named in honor of that great 19th century patriot who died a martyr to the cause of... Sir Kenneth Blackburn arrives and inspects the Guard of Honor. He is received by the President of the Legislative Council and the Speaker of the House and is escorted to the dais. His Lordship, the Right Reverend Dr. Percival Gibson, offers the dedicatory prayers.
It will now be possible to provide far more accommodation to the public galleries, and I hope that the attendance at meetings of the Legislative Council will receive more public support than has been the case in recent years. I think if you look at the names of the members that comprise the Council, you will realize that they are experts in their own field, and that their contributions to good government are at times outstanding.
It is in this chamber that action will be taken in the future, as in the past, to continue in the drive to improve the standards of life of all in Jamaica. But the future happiness and prosperity of this island do not depend alone on the work done in this chamber. They depend on the goodwill, the tolerance, and the understanding of every single person in this country. Each one has his part to play. And so it is, Mr. President and Mr. Speaker, with thankfulness for the past and with hope and confidence in the future, that I now have the honor to declare that George William Gordon House is open.
Henceforward, the worthy son of Jamaica, a new setting for new triumphs in the forward march of a people.